Welcome to the Sales Expert Channel. I'm Alice Heiman, and I am really excited to be here with you today to talk about the 8 elements of a complex sale and how to conquer each one of them so that you can shorten your sales cycle and close more deals. If you're not familiar with the Sales Expert Channel, I just briefly want to tell you that we have dozens of sales experts who put on excellent presentations and training pretty much every day of the week. And you can tune in and listen to those. They're all free. All you have to do is just subscribe to our channel and you will get notice of those. I do want to remind everybody that we are recording, and so if you have to jump off the call or if you are not here right now, you'll be able to listen to it later, obviously. And I also want to mention that there are some attachments that are super important, and I want you actually, if you can, download one of them right now. So look on your screen just below where the slides are, and you'll see some attachments and links. And one of them is the 8 Elements worksheet. And I'm actually going to be asking you to think through some of these things while I'm talking. You know, since I wish the line was open and you could all ask me questions and we could have interaction, but too many people to do that. So what I'm going to do is post some questions, and there are some steps on this worksheet that you can go through with me and fill those in as we go along. You can also post questions, and just to make sure everybody knows what that question is, find the area to ask a question, and would you please tell me where you're calling in from today and why you're excited about learning the 8 elements of a complex sale. So go ahead and start just, kind of typing those in, and let me hear from all of you. There's some other attachments I'll tell you about while you're doing that. Besides the worksheet, there is a link to an article that has a lot of the same information in it. And then there are also some other things that might be helpful to you, as well as information about a follow-up webinar that I'm going to do on the sales leader's role in the complex sale. And that goes for if you're a business owner, a sales leader, or anyone who is interested in leading sales and understanding what their role is in the complex sale. So let's see if we have anything coming in here in the chat. I don't see anything yet, but if you're out there, go ahead and chat something to me. Tell me where you're calling in from, and then also please tell me what is interesting you about learning more about a complex sale. And while you're doing that, let's see, I've got a couple coming in. Okay, Rolling Meadows, Illinois, great. Want to know how to shorten the sales cycle, right? Of course we do. And let's see, Biff from Linville, PA, good. I'm glad you're excited. I am too. It's really fun when you get a few ideas on how to shorten the sales cycle and it actually starts working. We practice a lot of these things with my clients, and they just get so excited when it works and the sales cycle is getting shorter. There's one from Reno, Northern New Jersey. I grew up in New Jersey, so hi, Jersey. Let's see. Looking to close sales faster, great, love it. We're going to work on that, and hopefully some of the tips I'm going to give you are going to help. So please download that 8 Elements of a Complex Sale so you can kind of see that. If you want to print it, whatever works best for you. I'll also be talking through it, and there'll be some stuff on the screen, so you can just get some paper out and write on it. That's fine too if you can't download it right now. So without further ado, let's get started. And we are going to talk about the 8 elements of a complex sale and how to master them. Everyone today is complaining about the complex sale, right? There's so many buying influences. There's a lot of different challenges, high dollars, right? All of these things that are getting in the way. And so what we want to do is figure out all the best ways to handle this. So I want to start by just saying that there are few things worse than being poorly positioned in an account that has tremendous potential. It is so frustrating when you're sitting there looking at either a brand new account that you're trying to break into or an existing customer, and you're thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, there's just so much business here, but I can't get it because I can't get to the right people. I'm just really poorly positioned. And I want to tell you a bit of a story to maybe you can relate to. I was on a sales call with the CEO and several members of his team, and we went to visit one of their very first customers. They'd done some decent business with this customer over the years, but it became clear really quickly as everybody was talking that the reason they hadn't done more business is because they were poorly positioned. So I'm wondering, how many of you are business owners who still spend time selling and managing large accounts? Would you just let me know, say, yes, I'm a business owner and I definitely still spend time selling and managing large accounts? And then how many of you are in a sales leadership position, and although you are managing salespeople, you're still managing accounts or selling? So tell me which you are. Are you a business owner who's still got your hands in sales, or are you a sales manager who still maybe carries a bag or manages some accounts as well as managing salespeople? So you can go ahead and just put that in. Actually, you can put that in the chat, I think, that, or the questions, doesn't matter, either one, and let me know. Well, as you're doing that, I want to finish the story here. So in this case, the CEO, who had, he was the founder, and he had landed this large account in the early days of the company. But he had never really built a strategy. He was still managing the account, but he didn't have a strategy to get the other people in his organization positioned properly with the right people and then move himself up, to be positioned higher. So basically they were still looking at him as the sales guy, even though he's the owner of the company and, doing a lot of other things. So he had some of the people in the company involved, but they were all stuck at that same level, and they, again, weren't positioned well enough to really go get more business in that company. So at the sales meeting that they had with the company, the buying influence that they met with was really clear that he could continue with the project he was on, but he couldn't make any other decisions for any other groups. And the one name he gave as the person who they should talk to was actually a person who had been blocking them. So that was tough. But it did give us some ideas. So after this sales call, I sat with the CEO and the other people on the team who had been there, and we talked about it. And basically, we started building a strategy, and we named all the buying influences that they knew, and decided who from their company should maintain those relationships. So, like, okay, these 5 people, and who's going to maintain those relationships? So, get them introduced, transfer the credibility, get them started managing those relationships. And then we went on LinkedIn and we started looking for all the people with the titles that we needed. And we immediately made a plan to get the CEO out of maintaining that relationship with the lower level buying influences and get himself positioned higher in the organization. So we had several ideas about who we needed to connect with and start a dialogue. He did end up making a call to the buying influence who had sort of been blocking him, but he had a whole new strategy, so the conversation went completely differently. And he was able to relate to her what he had learned and what needed to happen next, and she was really able to help him because it had a very specific ask, and she knew what he needed her to do. So the call obviously went really well, and now they are on their way to being positioned much better in that account, meeting all of the other people that they need to meet and moving some deals forward. So this is the kind of thing that I see happening day after day. Companies are just, the people in the company are poorly positioned with the people they're trying to sell to. So we've got to break loose from that. So the goal of our time here together is for you to clearly understand these 8 elements that are making the sale complex, and then to learn some techniques to master them. And I'm going to share those with you. And again, get ready to write some stuff down. If you weren't able to download the handout that I'm talking about, you can download it later, but just get ready to write a few things down. Now, as we move into this, I just want to go over some data with you that we have. In the B2B sales, more people now participate in buying decisions, and the buying process has become more formalized as buyers seek to reduce risk. So my good friends at CSO Insights are constantly doing research and finding out what's going on with a complex sale. And I'm sure you've all noticed that maybe where there used to be 2, 3, or 4 people, there are more, and people are very risk averse these days. I mean, nobody wants to be fired, right? So the number of people involved in a business-to-business sale, right, has climbed from an average of 5.4 just 2 years ago to 6.8 today. Now, I don't know where that other 0.2 of a person is, but anyway, 6 people involved. That's a lot. And they're coming from all different roles and functions that didn't used to get involved in the decisions that, for what you're selling. So it's really interesting to start to see, wow, why are so many people involved in making this decision, and why are people from other functional areas that don't have anything to do with this getting involved with it? But I'm seeing it every day, and I know you are too. And so some of you may know that I come from Miller Heiman, which is now the Miller Heiman Group, but my dad, Steve Heiman, and his partner, Bob Miller, founded that company back in the late 70s. And one of the things that they used to always say is, whatever got you where you are today is no longer sufficient to keep you there. And that is so true for the complex sale. So all of you want to grow your companies. All of you want to get bigger. All of you want more sales. All of you want to sell your companies for millions of dollars at some point, millions, maybe billions. And so you've got to do something to propel yourself forward. And what you're doing right now today may not be good enough, and especially when it comes to the complex sale, because things are changing so rapidly. We need to continually change to evolve and understand our buyer's current state. It's just changing all the time. There are market forces working out there on them. There's different types of risk involved in their companies. There's all kinds of things we never even get to know about. So people have a lot on their minds. They're busy. They're working on many projects at one time. We definitely have to keep up with all of that so that we can understand our buyer's current state. And so we have the complex sale, and we have to learn how to deal with it. Just want to take a look at a few of the comments coming in. Somebody said, I'm trained in strategic selling, great methodology. Thank you. And then trouble with your system, can't log into the session, video or sound. Okay, I'm not sure how to answer that, but this is recorded, so we'll get you the information, I promise. And then I see a lot of you had sent in messages telling me that you're a sales leader or a business owner. Thank you so much for chiming in on that. So let's take a look at the complex sale. And what is a complex sale? So just on a piece of paper, I want you to jot down the answer to that question. What does that mean to you? What is a complex sale at your company, in your world? Go ahead and jot down the answer to that question. All right, so everybody's kind of defining the complex sale. If you want to chat it in, that's fine. I think that there are probably many definitions, but most of them are going to be very similar. But at each company, of course, things are a little bit different. So what is a complex sale at your company? Write that down. And I may either confirm your understanding of the complex sale, or I may change your understanding of it just a little bit. Okay, so let's go on to defining the complex sale and what makes it so complex. You have your own definition, but again, I'm going to share some things that may add to that, change your mind a bit, or confirm what you already have. So I've identified 8 elements. Yeah, there may be more, But if you think of another one that I didn't think of, please let me know. The first one, and I'm going to go through these one by one, and then I'm going to go back and give you a solution for each of them. So as we go through, please jot down a couple of notes on what I say here, but know that I'm going to go back through all of these and give you some solutions as well. So first off, of course, we have the long sales cycle. Now, everything else that impacts the complex sale is part of making the sales cycle longer. In and of itself, a complex deal is going to have a long sales cycle because there's budgeting issues and there's lots of complexities and there's so many people, right? We're going to talk about each one of those individually, but sometimes it just takes a long time, if you're especially a small company selling to a really large company, to get all the meetings done that have to be done, to get all the paperwork done, to become a preferred vendor, to work through all of the things that their finance department needs. It just takes time. So that's just something that we have to realize. And mapping that is super important. So we're going to talk some more about that in a minute. But I want you to think about this. Is your sales cycle getting longer? If it's yes, okay. Why do you think it's getting longer? How much longer is it getting? So, for example, is it 3 months, 6 months, 1 year? How many of you have a sales cycle that's more than a year? That's a long sales cycle. But it's not uncommon, and I've heard it many times lately, that sales cycles are taking up to a year. So we've got to figure out what's causing that, and we've got to map that sales cycle and know what all the steps are from beginning to end so that we can figure out how to shorten them. If you're not sure how long your sales cycle is, some people, give me a guesstimate, a range, 6 to 8 months, these kinds of things. You're not alone. A lot of people don't actually know what the length of their sales cycle is. And the only way that you're going to know is if you track properly and you measure consistently. A lot of people measure from a different point. So the first thing you want to do is say, we are going to measure our sales cycle from the first appointment. Now, that can be complicated too. Some people like to start from when they start prospecting, but that can be just really take a long time to even get an appointment. So I don't know if you want to measure that. You may want to measure the time from starting prospecting to getting an appointment, and then measure the time from your appointment until you either close the deal or lose the deal. So all of those are good measures. One thing that you do want to be sure of, though, is when you are measuring, you're measuring from the start of talking to a qualified lead. Now, you don't always know whether the lead is qualified before you get on the phone with them, but the better you target your audience and the more research you do prior to getting on that first call, the more you'll know whether this is a qualified buyer or not. So it's important, because if we're talking a lot of first appointments with unqualified buyers and then we're trying to measure the length of that sales cycle, yeah, it's going to take us nowhere fast. So think about how you're going to measure. Are you going to measure from, knowing that it's a qualified buyer to closing or losing the deal, or just from first appointment to closing or losing the deal? Are you going to measure the time it takes from prospecting to getting your first appointment? Decide what you're going to measure. That's the most important thing. All right, so now moving on to the next element, and that is high dollar stakes. So things have gotten more expensive, right? And if you're selling software as a service, if you're in manufacturing, any different, if you're selling services of some type, things have gotten more expensive, and people haven't budgeted for them. So they may have had a budget from years ago, and that budget isn't going to cover what they need now. So we've got to take into consideration that prices have risen. Things cost different amounts. People don't really know what things cost today, and they haven't budgeted properly. And I want you to think about these questions. So how many of you have a sale that's average deal 100K or less, okay? That may not take as long as something that's $250,000 or $500,000 or $1 million plus, right? So the length of the sales cycle can become longer the higher the dollars are. And we have to keep that in consideration because as we move up and, who's got the control over the budget? Well, in my department, I have control up to $250,000, but I want to buy this from you and it's $1 million. I've got to go to my CEO to get that money. So we really have to think about that. And the other thing I want you to think about is if your average deal size is $250,000, but you do have some deals that are $500,000 or $1 million or more, how many more of the deals that are under $500,000 could be higher dollars if you were better positioned? So I know with a lot of my clients, they go in and they do these smaller deals, $40,000, $50,000, $100,000, because that's the budget at the level that they're calling on. But if you have the ability to get in there and do $1 million deal, you're going to have to meet with different people. You're going to have to help them get the budget. It's a whole different ballgame. So if you're well positioned, if you know all the buying influences, if you have good relationships with them, it's much easier to move up into these higher deals. So getting better positioned is going to be the key to these $500,000, $1 million plus deals. Right. The next element is multiple buying influences. Now, this is no surprise to anyone, and just a moment earlier I told you there were 6.8 people, according to the research, that are involved in making the decision. But how many of them are you working with? Out of those 6, are you working with 2, 3 of them, 4 of them? Okay. If you're not working with all 6 of them, it's going to be a longer sales cycle. So how do you get positioned with all of the buying influences? We'll talk about that in a minute. But you do have to figure out who they are and where they are and how you're going to get to them. Now, this next one is a tough one. It's perceived risk. And I think for most salespeople, for most people in general, we can't understand the risk involved. We find it hard to put ourselves in the shoes of the buyer and truly understand the risk involved in making a decision. Now, not just the decision to buy your product or another product, but making any decision. And the reason is because these people are afraid to lose their jobs. They do not want to be fired for making a bad decision. Now, especially if you're a small company, you're under $10 million and you're selling to a company that's $1 billion plus or several $billion. They're looking at you, little teeny tiny company, and saying, this is very risky if I buy from you. You've only been in business 3 years, 5 years. I don't even know if you're going to stay in business. If you take my order, will you even be able to deliver on that? They are afraid of you. Some of you might have been on my call with Barbara Weaver-Smith the other day where we were talking about whale hunting, and she was saying the number one problem is that they're afraid of you. These big companies are afraid of little companies. Now, there's lots of positives to doing business with a small company as well, and that's why big companies do business with small companies. But you have to understand this perceived risk, and you kind of have to think about it ahead of time and say to yourself, what are the risks involved with them doing business with us? One of them can just possibly be that they're going to pay you in 120 plus days, and you may not be able to float yourself that long because you've got to deliver goods that cost you money. And they're afraid that you won't be able to do that. So do you have a line of credit, and are you ready to prove that to them? We want to remove all of the risk that we can and show them, how to mitigate that risk. But first they have to understand that they are afraid. And look, nobody wants to be fired, right? So if they make a decision to go with the big company, the brand name that everybody knows, and that fails, there's not as much risk in that because it's like, well, that's the brand name. We did business with them. It was their problem. But if they do some business with some little unknown company and they fail, they'll be like, well, why did you choose them? That wasn't a good decision. You're out of here. So keep in mind that this risk is very real. And people do want to keep their jobs. They're doing the best they can every day, right, to just get up and do their work. And the last thing they need is more risk in their job. Now, of course, there's multiple solutions, right? So you go into any deal knowing that there's probably competitors in there. There's somebody who does something similar to what you do, and they're trying to sell as well. But there's other solutions besides that. One of them is do nothing. Just sit there and do nothing. Do exactly what we're doing now today. And I think that's one of the ones that kills us because we're not prepared for that. We're prepared for them to buy from a competitor, and we're prepared to talk about how much better we are than the competitor. But what about when they want to do nothing at all? And they're just like, status quo, leave it alone, we're not going to change. That's a tough one. So the other thing is they could build something internally themselves. That happens pretty frequently. They're like, oh, we'll just have our developers do it, or we'll train our trainers to do it some other way. So they have multiple solutions. Now, sometimes when we have too many choices, it makes the sales cycle even longer because now we have to look at each one of these choices and weigh the benefits. So as a buyer, more solutions make it harder for me. I mean, it's like when I go into the grocery store these days, and I just wanted to buy a bottle of water. And my goodness, there is an entire aisle full of water. You know, how do I decide which one to buy? And remember, when there is no obvious difference, people will immediately go to price. So if I look at all these waters and I can't see a difference or something doesn't catch my eye, I just look for the cheapest one. But if I see a pretty bottle or a more convenient bottle, or it says, oh, this water is special somehow and I believe it, then I'm going to pay a little more and get that. But it's the same with a big complex deal that's $1 million. If your solution looks like every other solution, or if I think I can build as good of a solution in-house as you have, right? You know, how are you differentiating yourself? So when you have multiple solutions, you've got to be prepared for that. Now, the next element is the technical or integration complexities. Now, if you're selling any kind of part that has to be attached to another part or integrated into something that's being built, if you have software as a service and it's going to have to be integrated into a network and put on people's desktops and it's going to have to, you know, interface with other things, there's all kinds of complexities here. We all know that when everyone else says yes and everybody wants to do it, and we call in the IT people, we call in the people who are going to do the integrations, they can crush it. They can just say, no, this can't be done, or they can tell you that it's going to take much, much longer than you thought it was. So we have to really be aware of and understand those technical complexities going in so that we know how long that's going to take, and that will help us know how long the sales cycle is going to be. If we get in there early on with those things, that's going to make it a lot better, right? And now here's one you may not have thought of. Multiple influencers on your own team. So I've seen this so many times. The salesperson comes in, they've got a great deal, they've got the contract, they're ready to go, and the finance people get involved, and the legal people get involved, and the CEO gets involved. They all want to read the contract, and they want to redline it, and then they want to know this, and they want to know that. This salesperson's just trying to make a deal. Well, I get it. There's legal stuff. I get it. There's financial stuff. But we've got to make it easy for people to buy from us, and we cannot have a sales prevention department in our own company. I had a client who the salespeople would go out, they would talk to these great big companies. They were a really small company. They talked to these great big companies. They got everything settled, all the details. They'd come back with a contract, and the person who was supposed to read the contracts was just too busy. 2 weeks later, 3 days, where's the contract? Well, I haven't had time to read it yet. A week, haven't had time to read it yet. A week and a half, haven't had time to read it yet. 2 weeks, the customer is still waiting for you to come back with that signed contract so that you can start collecting money from them and they can start getting your goods and services, and somebody doesn't have time to read the contract. How can that be? That is a real sales prevention department. You can't have a sales prevention department. You've got to look for those departments and figure out where they are, and then we're going to have to do something about it, right? So the next one is other. That's the last of the 8 elements. Other. I don't know what it is, but I want you to jot it down. What do you think is holding up the sale at your company? What is your company doing that might be lengthening the sales cycle, or what is unique to your sale that makes it a longer sales cycle? And that is the 8th element. So think now about the complexities of your sale, and if you downloaded the worksheet, check off the ones that apply to you. Do you have a long sales cycle? Yes or no? Is it high dollar stakes? Are your deals $100,000, $500,000, $1 million plus? Are there multiple solutions for your buyers to consider? Is there perceived risk that maybe you didn't even realize? Are there technical or integration complexities? Are there multiple influencers on your own team who could be preventing things from happening, who could be slowing things down, right? And what else? What's the other thing? What are the complexities of your sale? Now we're going to spend the last few minutes going through some solutions so that you can master these complexities and shorten your sales cycle. The first thing I really want you to think about with this long sales cycle is what does make it so long, and I really want you to look at some of the last few deals that you closed and the last few deals that you lost, and from the time you had your first appointment with the first buyer and maybe the group of buyers that you were talking to, but those first appointments to the time where you closed it or lost it, how long was that? Take, let's say, your last 5 deals. And look and see, well, it was 6 months, it was 8 months, it was 7 months, it was 6, it was 9, and then you kind of start to get that average, right? And then map what happened along the way. So had an appointment with the first person who was interested, had to talk with them and get them to introduce me to the other buying influences. That took a week. Then we had to arrange another call. Then we talked to all the buying influencers, learned what they needed, and then they wanted to see how the product worked. So we set up a time to show them how the product worked. After that, they wanted to do a trial, so we set up the trial. And I want you to put, like, this took 2 days, a week, 3 weeks, and start to really see how long each part of your sales cycle was going into this, so you can analyze it. And if it's like, oh, it took 2 weeks for our own team to review the contract, too long. What can you do to fix that? Oh, it took me 3 weeks to get all of the buying influencers on the phone together so that I could show them the product. 3 weeks? Why was that? Oh, because you were busy? Or was it because they were busy? Or was it wasn't a high enough priority for them? How can we shorten that down, right? So think about what's making it so long and what can be done on your side to shorten it. Now, one of the things I have my clients do is I have them write out a list of every step that they have to do and that the customer has to do in order to get to the point where they can close the deal. And I literally have them map that and send it to the prospect. So once we know they're interested, of course, and they are moving forward, we say, here's how this works. First, we're going to do this, and it's going to take this long. Then we're going to do this, then you're going to do this, then we're going to do this. And there's just a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 things that need to be done before we can sign a contract and get this implemented at your company. And timelines can be put against that. Now, at the very beginning of the sales cycle, everybody's really clear on what needs to be done and how long it's going to take. So that when you're calling them, you're not just calling to check in and see if they made a decision yet, or just calling to check and see if they were able to get these other buying influences on a call with you. You're calling to say, hey, we're following the timeline, and we are due for another demo on this date. Want to be sure you're still ready. We've got it all scheduled, that kind of thing. So you're checking in on tasks that need to be completed. Now, on that note, making sure that with every call and every email, there's a call to action with a date and time, and everybody's agreeing to it. Because what happens, people go cold on you. You hang up the phone without having your next appointment set or the next action. and then you have to chase them down to get your next appointment because you haven't set one. That will lengthen your sales cycle as well. So keep in mind also that if you qualify the lead up front, it's going to shorten the sales cycle. It's going to make it easier. If you build solid relationships in the beginning and stay in touch with people and add value by giving them really good content and good information that's going to help them make the best decision, that's going to shorten your sales cycle. If you bring in the right people from your company and position them with the leaders at the prospect's company early on in the sales cycle and let them build relationships, that's going to help. Again, always setting that next appointment and everybody agreeing on the next actions before you leave your meeting, and always following up and writing with a summary of what you're going to do by when, all the actions. These are all things that are going to make the sales cycle shorter. Now, with the high dollar stakes, do they have a budget and who approves the budget? These are things you just have to know very early on in the sales cycle. So you have to ask those questions, but everybody's nervous to ask the budget questions, and salespeople tell me all the time, well, I ask them and they tell me I don't know the budget or I can't tell you the budget. Okay, well, this is going to present a problem, and it's going to lengthen the sales cycle. We all have to be on the same page together. If you want to buy from me, you know it's going to cost something. So we've got to get the money out on the table fast. So ask those budget questions up front, and if they won't tell you or can't tell you, then you've got to dig in a little bit more. Do you have a budget established, or will we be helping you create the budget? Do you have a budget established, or will we be helping you create the budget? No, we have a budget. Great. Can you tell me what that is? If they can't, for whatever reason, okay, that's fine. Then help me with a ballpark, because I know what it's going to cost. In some cases, you can give, you've got a ballpark. This is a deal that's $250K or $500K. You know, especially if it's users or seats, or if they're going to buy a certain quantity of something, you have it in your mind. So you can ask them for a ballpark. Well, so tell me, were you thinking about spending around $350,000 or $500,000 to get this project done or to make this purchase? Or you can just flat out say to them, for this many of this part, it's X. I want to be sure you have that in your budget before we move forward. So get the budget stuff out fast. And if they don't know answers to things, you can ask them things like, when you've made purchases like this in the past, how did you get the budget established? Or who on the team establishes the budget? So don't give up. Early on, get the answers to these questions, because otherwise the sales cycle is going to go longer, because you're going to get to the point. I see this all the time. We do the discovery, we do the demo, we have a trial, we talk a little bit about money but not much, and then we throw a proposal at them through email. They get the proposal and they're shocked. They're shocked at the price. Okay, well, we made a bunch of mistakes there, right? One, we didn't talk about the money way up front, so we stopped. Don't waste anybody's time. Why do a demo or a trial if they don't have the budget for what they're going to buy, right? Or if they don't know how to get the budget. I mean, maybe you can help them get the budget, that's fine. But you got to talk about the dollars up front. Do you have them, or how are you going to get them? And then sending a proposal blind where they haven't heard the price yet and letting them be shocked on their own, no good. Don't do that. Don't ever send a proposal and let them read through it themselves. What you do is you say, I'll have this proposal ready on Tuesday. What time can we meet? You either meet them in person, you meet them in an online meeting where you can share the screen, or a phone meeting, and just before you get on the phone, you hit send so they have the proposal and can open it up while you're on the phone, and you can walk them through it. They shouldn't be shocked, because you should have talked about the money up front, but you still want to go over every bit of the proposal and answer their questions with them. Don't let them do it on their own. That lengthens the sales cycle as well. All right, the multiple buying influences. Just think for the deals that you're working on right now. Have you identified all of the people involved in making the decision? Now, sometimes you can't get to them, but you should know that they're involved. So if you know who they are, You've identified them. You're interacting with some of them. What do you know about them? And what else do you need to know that you might not know right now? And what's the best way to develop relationships with them? So this is really what we need to know. We have to identify them. We have to get to know them. We need to do our research and do our homework, and we have to build relationships. Now, this isn't always easy. People don't want to spend time building a relationship with you. They just want to buy what they need to buy. Okay. But it's going to be harder. So if we can develop relationships with them, first develop a rapport that allows you to get to know them better. And with social media today, you should be able to find out pretty much everything you need to know. All right. So with the buying influences, if you can't work with all of them, then you have to ask questions like, who else is going to be involved in making the decision, and what's the best way to include them? And if they're not going to be at the meetings, if they're not going to be, hands-on, then how do we get the information we need to them so that we can make it the best decision? Now, let me just check with the questions here. We find sometimes the customer will not allow us to review the proposal with them. I want to review it first, prepare, and then review with you. What can we do about this? Yeah, sometimes they're just not going to let you review it with them, but then you have to ask yourself, were you just like the third bid and they needed another proposal because they're already figured out who they're buying from? So you have to decide how much time you want to spend, and the way to figure it out is take a look at all the proposals you've done in the last year. How many of them have you won? How many did you lose? And for the ones you won, were you able to go through the proposal with them, or did they do it on their own? For the ones you lost, did you go through the proposal with them, or did they do it on their own? So start to analyze the data you already have. If it seems like every time you let them go on their own to do the proposal, you lose, then don't do it anymore. Just say, yeah, completely understand, we don't do that. You could be a little bit more diplomatic, but just say, we've been doing this a long time, and our experience tells us this works best when we review the proposal with you. So before I would ever even write a proposal, I would ask them, okay, so we're going to put this together in a proposal. Now, first you should have talked it all through. This is what you want us to do. This is what we're going to do. I'll write that down in a proposal for you. When will you be able to review that with us? They say, oh, no, just write it up and send it to us. Well, that makes me question whether they're really a qualified buyer and if they already have made up their mind or not. So I think if you analyze some of the data you have, then you're going to be able to decide for yourself whether you should send a proposal. Now, sometimes it works really well for some of my clients. They send the proposal. They ask, of course, can we review it with you? And they say no. They still send it. They still win a lot of them. It's up to you. You kind of have to decide about that. All right, so moving on, we have perceived risk. So what can we do about perceived risk? Well, first of all, do you know what risk they perceive, right? Are you a small company selling to a large company? Are they thinking, oh my gosh, are you going to be able to do this? Are you going to be able to deliver? Are they worried because they've done business with small companies in the past that went out of business? So figure out what the risk is that they perceive and ask questions around that. Next, the multiple solutions. It's pretty straightforward. Figure out who the competitors are. Ask the questions. What other solutions have you considered? Don't say, who are my competitors? What other solutions have you considered? Is it possible that you'll do it in-house? Are there other companies you might buy this from? Is there another way that you could meet this need? Or is doing nothing an option? So, all right. And I just realized I'm kind of running short on time, so I'm going to keep going here. Technical or integration complexities. What can prevent the sale, right? And who has to deal with the technical complexities? Find out early in the sale so you can shorten your sales cycle. Then there are, of course, the people on your own team. The people on your own team that can prevent the sale. So be thinking about that and who's stalling it on your end. Go to the leaders of your company if you're not the leader and figure out what to do about it. And then think about who you need to bring in from the beginning so that you can shorten your sales cycle. And then, of course, think through all of the other things that are making your sale complex and make a plan. So I think we met our goals. You clearly understand the 8 elements now. I've mapped them out for you, and I've given you a few ideas on how to combat each of them. But know that I am happy to answer your questions. You can find me on LinkedIn, or you can email me. I'm going to give you that in a minute. But first I want you to type in, what are you going to commit to do? What are you going to do differently? So go ahead and type that in. Based on what you've learned, what are you going to do differently? And then I also, we want to remind you that on the 28th, I have another webinar on the sales leader's role in conquering the complex sale. We're going to go over some more things that are going to help you shorten your sales cycle. So sign up for that, and there's a link in the attachment section. And then this is how you connect with me if you have any questions. I'd be delighted to talk with you. And I will give you, any of you, 30 minutes of my time to talk with you about your complex sale. Or my sister Liz, she's on my team as well. One of us would be happy to give you 30 minutes and talk about your complex sale. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. I hope you got some great information on how to shorten the sales cycle. Please send me your questions, and I will look forward to seeing you on the 28th.